Mr. Speaker, day after day we sit in this place and we listen to question period. We listen to the debates and you know, it's quite interesting most of the time. And I think anybody that's watching on TV would also consider it interesting. But it always astounds me about how much misinformation or half-truths or fake news, as you want to call it, Mr. Speaker, come in these walls, and mostly, you know, I have to be fair, it comes from the other side, you know, from the members opposite, but, you know, they can take credit for all of that. But, you know, right after about a year and a half ago, we, in 2017, right after the budget, all of a sudden, everything bad was happening. It was as if the world had stopped on its axis, and you know, I think it's time that we actually took a look at what the facts are and how things have changed in Saskatchewan since then, and quite frankly, in the last 3 years. You know, everything was being cut. If you listened in this place to every debate or every question period, it was all being cut. You know, the public service was being gutted. Those of us that drive on Highway 11 every day see billboards saying essential pieces are being torn away. You know, it was catastrophic, and you know, it was almost like an apocalypse. But Mr. Speaker, nothing could be further from the truth. We made some hard decisions in 2017, and yeah, we walked some of those back. But you know, next year we're going to be back to balance in our budget, and that's a good thing. We have a AAA credit rating. People are investing in our province. People are still moving to our province, and you know, that's a pretty good indicator that they're believing in our message. We increased the health budget by 2.9%, almost 3%, Mr. Speaker. That budget now is almost $6 billion. That's an incredible investment in health care, and an incredible investment in the people that look after us when we're sick. If you listen to the rhetoric that goes on both in here and outside of here, you would think that we were slashing social services. We were cutting services to the most vulnerable in our society and in our province, but yet that budget increased by almost 5%. Now, you could listen and say, you could listen to the opposition, and you can listen to the rhetoric that, you know, we shouldn't be increasing the budget because there's more people that access those services. That's why we increased the budget. It's not that we're providing more services or better services to those people, but you know, that just doesn't cut it. Mr. Speaker, that budget is almost $1.2 billion in the last budget. That's a lot of money. We hear it time after time, day after day, that these things are happening and that our province is failing, and it's just not true, Mr. Speaker. Recently, there's been billboards in Saskatoon asking where did all the money go, asking us where did all the money go, and you know what, Mr. Speaker, we're proud that we have an answer for that. Since 2007, we've provided record income tax relief for those who are on the lowest scale of our income tax. That's 112,000 people that we've actually taken off the tax rolls. They pay no Saskatchewan income tax, Mr. Speaker. The money went to new and improved infrastructure to support growth and reverse, quite frankly, the years of neglect under the NDP when our population was declining. People were moving out of Saskatchewan. Last one here, turn off the lights, was something that we heard over and over again. In Saskatoon, we're looking forward to the new Jim Pattison's Children's Hospital opening next year. It's been a much anticipated event that's going to happen. You know, we talked about it for 20 years prior to our government being formed, and it never happened. We weren't big enough. We didn't need one. It was a waste of resources. It would take away from other resources. You know, that was small way of thinking, Mr. Speaker. And now we are going to open a new Jim Pattison Children's Hospital in Saskatoon, and our investment in that is over $250 million, Mr. Speaker. I could go on and on about the way that things were under the NDP, but you know, when you ask where the money went, The important things are an investment in our people. So the money delivered more than 900 new doctors to Saskatchewan. It delivered more than 3,700 new nurses and lower surgical wait times for Saskatchewan people. Mr. Speaker, there's just no comparison to the way it was before 2007 and the way it is now. And the member from Carrot River just reminded me the new hospital in North Battleford. What a fantastic facility. The old hospital, over 100 years old. We needed a new one. And so here we go. There we go. So now, we want to talk about education infrastructure funding, Mr. Speaker, and that's going to be the focal point, as the member from Saskatoon Centre reminded me. That's going to be the focal point of the motion that we're going to put forward here later today. Since 2007, when we formed government, just 11 short years ago, Mr. Speaker, our government has invested $1.62 billion on education capital. Mr. Speaker, $1.62 billion is a quite substantial investment. I find if we contrast and compare, Mr. Speaker, in the last 10 years that the NDP had the opportunity to form government, they spent $295 million, Mr. Speaker. $295 million. We increased that budget in the last 10 years over almost 450%. Mr. Speaker, that's incredible. And how did we do it? We did it with the people of this province. Since 2007, we've opened 40 new schools, and 2 more are on the way. Both in one in Weyburn and one in Rosthern. That's 40 new schools, Mr. Speaker, in the last 10 years. And we've also completed 23 major renovations, some of which are my constituency in Saskatoon. So we've got 18 new joint-use schools in Regina, Saskatoon, Warman, and Martensville that opened on September 5th, 2017. I had the honor to be a part of those openings, Mr. Speaker, for two of those schools, and they are fantastic. You talk to the principals, you talk to the teachers, you talk to the students, especially. The member from Regina Lakeview is providing comments as well, but you talk to those students, and they are just fantastically enthusiastic about their new schools. They're bright, they're clean, they're innovative. They have many sharing spaces that they can sit with other students in their classes, and you know, there's smiles all around, Mr. Speaker. So those schools will provide 11,000 students with new spaces. So that's 3,300 in Regina, 5,700 in Saskatoon, and 2,100 in Warman and Martensville. Those schools, Mr. Speaker, are 100% owned by the school boards. The total cost was $635 million, and we're saving over $30 million on construction and $100 million over the life of the contract. So don't take my word for it, Mr. Speaker. I trust KPMG. This is what they do, and this is what they looked at. So the project was built 6 years earlier using a P3. 73 Saskatchewan-based businesses were involved in the project, which is 72% of all the labor was involved in that project. 2,300 construction jobs were created. Mr. Speaker, that's a pretty sizable amount of jobs for construction alone. Now, besides the new schools that we built, we also started in a preventative maintenance renewal plan. Fantastic idea. Everybody can agree that it's a fantastic idea, Mr. Speaker. So it was under our government that it was implemented in 2013 and 14. Prior to that, there never was one. There never was one under the NDP, and I don't know why. I think maybe it's because their preventative maintenance, Mr. Speaker, was just to close the school. That's how they prevented them from having to actually maintain the schools.
176.
So since that time, in 2013-14, we've invested over $175 million in preventative maintenance and renewal, Mr. Speaker. It allows the Ministry of Education to assist boards of education in addressing rehabilitation and maintenance projects. and it provides greater autonomy to boards of education and ensures a strategic approach to maintenance. Not willy-nilly, not ad hoc, but a strategic approach to maintenance. We also started the relocatable classrooms program, which deals with space crunches as they're kind of plug-and-play classrooms. So they, as they're needed at one school or another, they can go back and forth. One of the most important parts of these new schools, Mr. Speaker, I have to say, is the childcare spaces that were created. These children that are very important, that as part of a community space, those childcare spaces are there to help the parents who might have a kid, a student in grade 2, but also one that isn't quite ready for kindergarten yet, that they have a place that they can take that child as well. And since 2008, 2009, we've invested over $566 million in childcare as well, Mr. Speaker. We've added almost 6,900 childcare spaces, which is an increase of 73%. Licensed childcare is affordable in Saskatchewan. Saskatoon and Regina ranked 8th and 10th among the 28 large Canadian cities for lowest childcare cost as well, Mr. Speaker. And you know, I think the numbers just really speak for themselves. We also just yesterday, Mr. Speaker, from Statistics Canada came out with a report, and it shows that remarkably, no matter what the members from the opposite side say, remarkably, Saskatchewan spends the most on secondary and primary education out of all the provinces. Saskatchewan spends the most of all. So that would be information that they should know as well. So, Mr. Speaker, I could go on and on, but I'll let others enter the debate. But I will move that this Assembly recognizes the government's investment in education infrastructure to reverse the damage done by the previous NDP government after years of neglect. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Hear, hear. Hear, hear.